Welcome, everyone, to a special anniversary edition of Totally Classic. And that's not to say this is our anniversary. I actually don't know what our anniversary would be, but it's not today, as far as I know.
It's probably close to our anniversary.
I know it might be. We should. It's at least it's a findable fact, which I always appreciate. We live in a world filled with strong opinions, and it's always nice when you can go, "Whoa, wait, what is this actually?" Um, Today's anniversary edition is inspired by, I don't know if you folks out here have noticed, but the past 2 or 3 weeks have been filled with 5-year anniversaries of lockdowns. A lot of people, 5-year anniversary of the pandemic. Some people call it the 5-year anniversary of COVID. I'll get into why I would not use those. But we're talking about 5 years after the lockdown very centrally, meaning like, oh, in March, 5 years ago, 2020, is when, the world went quiet, when the world decided to retreat from itself in some ways. Which,
Okay, I had to look it up.
yep.
Our first episode was at least recorded on March 11th, 2022.
Oh, look at that! We actually are. This is all. This is a late anniversary celebration of our own. 3 years, mind you. Not quite the same length of time, but we certainly. Oh, that's nice to know. Well, happy anniversary, Andy.
Well, happy anniversary. But obviously, this whole show heavily motivated by today's topic.
Yes, absolutely. In many ways, this was an early, certainly favorite time when it was my turn to pick. The response to the pandemic was a fascinating breaking open of how I view the world. I think probably one of my most substantial intellectual, socio-political, philosophical shifts in how I look at the world and society of like a top five in my life of my creeping up on 50 years on this planet. So today's episode is asking the question, 5 years after lockdown, have we learned anything? Question mark. And my pre-vote, Brendan McNamara, co-host of this podcast, is we did learn some things. So yes, I'm a thumbs up on that. I don't know if by the end of this conversation, I'm already feeling like that thumb might start turning.
And I, Andy Swindler, also co-host of Totally Classic. Uh, I'm also going to be a thumbs up because I do tend to believe we're learning, even if we don't know we are or we don't want to be. And maybe not learning as much as we could be if we're not attentive to it.
Sure, that's
But
true.
it's hard. Seems like a soft question in the sense that it's hard to imagine that we did not learn anything. Do we need to define we?
Yes. I don't, for me, well, we could. My we certainly, when I started thinking about we, I thought about we as the collective, probably national, somewhat global, but slightly more national than global, and the collective we, meaning we as human beings, as near as I can ascertain through my points of access for other human beings. However, I also think the we, meaning Andy and Brendan, is also a fully appropriate use. Anything from literally the plural of two people, meaning you and I, out expanding to the billions of people across the earth.
Oh, good. I love speaking for billions of people.
Me too. Me too. I like it. I think it's one of the great thing. One of the great. I mean, really, is as you as the son of a philosopher, um, that or a philosopher is a philosopher. Would you have called your father a philosopher or a philosophy scholar?
Both usually refer to him
Yeah,
as a philosopher.
a straight up philosopher. I assume that's one of the cool benefits, I think, of being like an accredited professor of philosophy that you get to call yourself a philosopher and not really just mean that in any sort of like casual or as in my bio has said on various social media platforms, basement philosopher.
I've
Like
often gone with digital philosopher. I think it still
uh,
says that
uh,
somewhere.
yeah, really? There you go. But it's nice. I feel like you can put a capital P on it once you're teaching.
Right.
Once you're
Right.
teaching at an accredited university, somehow that all like bypasses enough check marks in my brain, which is what a strange thing.
Maybe the difference
Um,
is I think he just sort of carried it with him everywhere. It
yeah, yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
just
yeah,
in the classroom.
yeah. Um, Philosophy kind of necessitates some degree of universal declaration. Um, And I think there are some aspects, there are certainly just like scientific, but there are certainly there are some somatic, there are some sociological, but there are certainly philosophical lessons that are at least potentially universal for those who pay attention. I think many people are numb to change. Many people are very obstinate and don't really want to learn anything. And there are some people who are very actively focused on unlearning, which is one could even, of course, argue is his own form of learning. But then I feel like that sort of undermines the whole idea of actually just deconstructing one's learning so as to kind of stop learning for a while and actually just rip down what one has learned. All of those, I think, whatever, tenable approaches to what we're trying to navigate, this thing called life. Andy, I sort of, because I like kind of doing things in format because it helps kind of control my uh, divagative trains of thought. Uh, Five things. I was like, what if we could do a handful of five things? Are there five things we learned, and are maybe there are five things we haven't yet learned, but should have or could have, or I don't know. So to me, it's almost like let's evaluate positively, and then let's have a little bit of a critical eye, with an eye towards, I think, as we often do on the show, hope as to the future, that the future can be unlike the past in a way that is truly what one could call like an evolution, an advancement in ourselves.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, would you like to kick us off? What's one thing you learned? We learned.
Um, I think for me, this is, and this I've talked about on the show a bunch of times, and I think we said it even briefly launched into it in our last brief episode, um, which was fun, and I sort of enjoy that. I'd like to explore that again. Um, One of the most palpable shifts for me, this is both personal and relating to our nation. I think I/we as a culture learned that Democrats are the least capable political party of the big two in our schematic. And I say that for myself personally. That was a huge, I would say the second tier largest disenchantment of the past 5 years was number one, realizing how phenomenally media was uh, misleading, potentially on purpose, on a constant, relatively constant basis. I didn't know that was happening. And then as you start to go, well, is that? And people say it is. And you're like, I don't know about that. Let me try to disprove that. And then you find that in trying to disprove it, you just managed to prove it. You're like, oh, darn. That was very cataclysmic. But certainly one that was very close to me was other than the fact, like to me, if I could run, and I was even thinking about this recently, if I ran for political office, especially right now, I would run as a Democrat. I would run as an abortion abolitionist Democrat, a defiantly pro-life Democrat. Because for most of my life, the Democratic Party has had the allure of like, not the good guys, but like of the two, they were the good guys, um, for a variety of reasons. And I think I was disabused of that so severely during the 5 years. And I think we were as well as we watched, especially in this last election, all non-white voting categories shifted right in their voting patterns. So we also know that there's only one category of white voters left with a positive association for the Democratic Party, and that is white women, college educated. No other. So what I bring up white people and colored people for the purposes of, well, what other things we focused on the past years as a collective, but also to note that um, I didn't want to say just like, so this is something I noticed. The addition of population, most of the top, whatever, five growth states the past 5 years are states run by Republicans. And the top five states, whatever they have been fled from, most of those are states run by Democrats. So generally, this is something we learned as a people. And I don't know if you guys, you've been paying attention, but like the fascinating thing is the Democrats. I was just an Axios post or article center. I think they're center bias source, might be slightly left. Democrats stare down deepest popularity crisis in decades. So other than I think in Reagan era, so for us that was like we were pretty young at that point. I was born when Carter was president, but Reagan was like the president of my early youth. Um, Democrats were he was massively popular. Democrats were very unpopular in that era. They are in that layer now in terms of like general social regard. They have a something like a 27% or something like that favorability rating by a at least by a CNN poll. There, what is it? 42, 20. I feel like I want to say it's 27%. I don't know if it quite matters, but um, it is record lows, and a lot of that is consequential. To me, that is a consequence of that party in general just mishandled and misresponded to the threat of the pandemic, just like disproportionately worse. So that I think is the first lesson. But would you push back on that at all, or do you have your own number? And or after that, do you have a number one?
I mean, we've talked about this at some length. I will say, yeah, I was similarly disillusioned, and our conversations helped to reveal a number of things um, about the Democrats, which at that time I might have conflated with the progressives, and I'm not sure that's entirely accurate or consistent.
I think there are, yeah, they're trying to figure that out right now.
Um, yeah, disillusioned to them being the good guys, and I guess I will relate this to my number five,
Mm,
which I think I'll just weave in, so we kind of stay on topic. I had phrased it as our systems of mass organization,
mm,
aka government, media, are woefully under-equipped to manage this kind of crisis based on anything other than mass fear.
hmm.
It just seemed like the aperture
Yeah.
for like complexity and I don't know, perhaps rationality, perhaps morality, just shrunk to like, okay, this is all we're going to talk about. This is all we're going to do.
Yeah. It is a fascinating. And I think it revealed to me a motivation I didn't previously associate with the Democrats, because I think I thought the Democrats were still like more liberal in a classic sense, but they're not really. That's just kind of not, they're more of a collectivist. Maybe even, I think there's socialist influence. This has lasted long enough. So I think they're more collectivist than they are about individual liberties, which liberalism specifically is centered on. And so I think a lot of that has to do with like wanting to I think a Democrat thing too is also wanting other people to take care of them and also wanting to be the people who take care of other people. So I don't mean it's just purely like the Democrats are lazy. They want other people to do things for them. But there is a thing where like we need a system wherein things can be done for people who can't do for themselves, which I say is both a positive and a negative. Um, and in which case, when danger is there, it becomes all the more radically important mindset wise to zoom to actually to shift to authoritarianism is almost seen as an act of charity or an act of mutual what is it rejected mutual aid. You know what I mean, where it's like we're going to come in like this is we're okay, we're only going to do this then, because that clarifies stuff for a lot of people, and I think it helps a lot of people's fears reduce, because then it's like, well, there's a strong leader, they've got a strong plan, they're not going to brook any mishigas saying anything otherwise, which to a lot of people was like that could make, if you were stuck in a whatever the bottom of the Titanic and the water's sinking in and you're like, oh no, we're on the bottom. Like we're in the bottom floor or whatever the bottom of a boat is called. Then you're like, but if someone all of a sudden is like, me, this way, this way to safety. If you say it loud enough, you know how much people would chill out? I bet you a solid number of people that will be less freaked out, even if that person's completely wrong and literally leads them into a room that explodes or whatever.
My
Just the
favorite
fact,
TV show, Battlestar Galactica, is based on an entire premise.
yes,
I know where Earth is. I got it.
yes, yes. I mean, that show was savvy as heck. Um, that I was like, that's what I saw come to fruition. And to me, again, this is what it taught me a lot philosophically about those who cleave to the left, and even myself. Um, but and then grossly disenchanted, I think, being like, well, but ultimately, for that to be truly helpful, that person has to lead us to a room that doesn't explode. Your number 5 relates to my number 2, which I've sort of already mentioned in corollary with the first one. The news media is not trustworthy, is what we learned. And I mean that to myself as well as the population entire. I would say this is a worldwide trend, but I'm speaking distinctly of the United States in terms of polling data. Gallup found that 36% of the US population has no trust in the media. Now, the media is way too broad of a term, but let's just assume for the purposes of the polling, and I haven't looked into the questions, so I haven't deep dove on this. Essentially, they're referring to media, meaning the news media. And 31% have a great deal or fair amount. That is, I think, a fair amount. It's funny. I think actually the national populations relate very closely to my own personal apprehension, which is whenever I read a news article, I'm somewhere in the 30 to 40 something of this is probably accurate. I'm going to need to at least, if I'm going to even make any sort of anything other than like, oh, that's a curious thing to hear. If I'm going to start making any adjudications based on it, I better validate it from at least 3 sources, at least 3 journalistic sources to know, even if it's 50% accurate. I funnily am not as skeptical as I am, and as much as I realize the news media is involved in not just misreporting things, but actively, intentionally reporting things that are incorrect. I still would not put myself in the 36% of the population who has no trust in the media. That is way too far. I'm like, I don't know. I would have, I guess, a fair amount. To me, a fair amount seems like a just amount, and a just amount seems in the maybe the 1/3. I got about 1/3 of trust for this, so I'm going to read it and be like, oh, okay, well, there's probably something in here that's real. That's still maybe again that's naive on my part. I don't know, but that is my general assumption. But I feel like that's something I learned, and I feel like we learned collectively because it was post 2020, 2021 in the past 5 years that we've gotten to our lowest media trust in polling history.
Yeah.
And that relates to what you were talking about, like our collective systems of sort of organization and assignation. I think this is one of the reasons why I think like kind of in the panic element, once you realize you grab onto a flotation device and realize it has 57 holes in it, or you just grab it and it immediately sinks underwater, you're like, oh snap. Like that's kind of when you realize how well you've taken care of your disaster supplies. And I think we haven't. In some ways, it's a great stress test, and I just think we failed the stress test pretty spectacularly. So, okay, a lot to improve on. Silver lining. Look at all the stuff we can do better.
Well, you're almost more annoyingly optimistic than me.
It does irritate people. Relentless
Yeah.
optimism.
And I think we did a whole episode, at least one, and I think we ended
Yeah.
up defining it as mass media or mainstream media.
Yeah, or legacy, or I don't know what we used. But yeah.
I want to say maybe it was mainstream.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I yeah, I feel that too.
Now,
Less trust.
did it crush you? Or did you not have the same naivete? Like I feel like again, I've talked about this before, but I had that like the paper, spotlight, good night and good luck, like just like that sort of look at all these or all the president's men, these like journalists, these intrepid warriors, like really seeking to kind of like constantly, almost like innovative constant scientists. They're like constantly trying to pull us back from the mayhem and miasma of propaganda and foolishness,
Yeah, that was
and
probably
then,
part of the reason I went into journalism school along with your wife.
yeah,
And yeah, I was probably a little too attracted by that heroism because that's not most journalism,
yeah,
as that is not most
sure.
of any career that has those anomalies.
Yeah.
So that's why I decided to become an entrepreneur, which is equally, probably even more unlikely to have the anomaly of being some kind of superhero, or even supervillain. I'd settle for supervillain at this point. I mean, what the hell?
Let's do big somethings.
But no, it's one of the either factual or sort of a weak excuse for getting kicked out of journalism school, technically, at the end is I do remember also looking at the state of journalism even in the late 90s and thinking, God,
Yeah.
this is all controlled by corporations. And so
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
like great journalists didn't exist, but it was like, oh
Sure.
God, this is a hard business to do good in, to do
Yeah.
uh to be sort of the real source of truth. Because
Yeah.
you're not even just fighting against the illusion, the elusiveness of truth, but you're fighting against the people who want to control the narrative, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Want to literally tell you what truth for the Orwellian factor.
Yeah. So I guess in some ways I was disillusioned, also
Wait,
combined with just compared to you,
wait.
especially like in just a fraction of consumptive ability.
Oh,
I just
uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
read slowly, and so I remember having magazine subscriptions and just being like, I'm just going to cancel this because I don't even
I'm
get past
I'm
the
I'm
cover.
12 months behind. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah,
What's your next number?
I guess the one question,
Oh, go.
without extending that too much, is did it get worse during the pandemic?
Oh,
During the well, it's funny, I
yeah.
was calling this the pandemic, but we're being a little more specific to call it lockdown, I think.
Yeah, I think it's well, because that's what, yeah, that's the sort of specific anniversary we're talking about. Well, and which relates to, I don't know. I mean, I think it's worse, but at the same time, I don't, I have to live in my fat answer to that. My fat, truest, bold, italics, underline answer is I don't know. I don't know if this stretches back to yellow journalism and William Randolph Hearst and like or whatever. I mean, may go back hundreds of years, and how propagandistic and outright false it is. Um, I can't unsee what's so obvious now. So to me, it seems like in these, let's say these 5-year anniversary pieces, the constant use of like how COVID damaged schools, and it talks about school closures exclusively. So to me, I'm like, this is like, I think at the point now where to me it's overt to me, so it seems bigger, but I don't know that it's actually larger. It just seems more deliberately evil now after watching
Mhm.
it for 5 years. And then you're going to tell me that COVID shut a school down. COVID didn't shut a single school down. Like as a journalist, that's a journalism. That's a Medill F. A respiratory virus can't shut a school down. I mean, now listen, if everyone in the whole school got COVID and literally was so sick they couldn't come to school, you could make a case. You're like, oh, COVID shut that school down. Sure,
Or even
sure.
just the teachers and the administrators, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If literally it afflicted everyone so bad that they couldn't come to school because they were so sick, which is this is a statistical. It's not impossible, but it's a statistical impossibility. But instead, what happened is the newspapers fostered fear. And so now, to me, they're obviously just covering their ass and they're trying to gaslight us into believing something that's not true. So then and they're trying to create the narrative, meaning they're trying to get people to say that. Like, oh, yeah, I lost my job because of the pandemic. Who? Who? Like, name me one. Name me one person who lost their job because of the pandemic. Like, oh, wait, do you mean people who like died with COVID? Do you mean people who had COVID so bad that then they couldn't go to work anymore? Is that what you're talking about? Because it's a pretty small percentage of people. So what you're most likely talking about is how the state responded. And but now the newspaper, I was like, oh, the newspapers are really here to either in a bipartisan fashion tell you that what their part of the government is doing is just inevitable. It's inevitable and beautiful, and it's as sacred and delightful as the ocean. Whether that's pushing what the Republican Party's up to on, depending on your outlet, or what the Democratic Party is up to. Just what they did was just inevitable. It's just as natural as a virus, which might have been manipulated by man.
We were just at the Shed Aquarium yesterday. We saw the beluga whales have a new
Oh,
baby beluga named Opus, and
come on.
we saw three of them. It was the most
It's so beautiful.
charming and cute thing maybe I've ever seen.
It's so it's you understand why Rafi had to create a hit. Google
Um,
that, folks. Google it.
Everything.
Spotify it, DuckDuckGo it, whatever. Uh, yeah. So what's next on your list?
What I got? I got I'm gonna combine two just to
Okay.
move us along. These are kind of
Yep.
related. Number one, the world is too loud.
Hmm.
I relished the silence.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we might we could name that as being an introvert, um, especially in the definition I prefer, which is about energy reclamation, like just how
Hmm.
kind of expensive it is energetically to walk through the world. So when it was quiet, it was just like, oh, this is lovely. It felt like everything became like a walk in the woods, just like a
Yeah.
little eerie, especially at the beginning when it was just empty streets and whatnot. But I generally actually liked it, and I did take some walks in the woods too. Um, and it is funny I say that though because the catalytic converter was stolen from my Prius I think twice, and without a catalytic converter it sounds like so loud,
Yeah.
right? It's like a muscle
Yeah.
car, like just worse really because it's not intentional. And so I'm driving around. There's very little traffic in Chicago, and I'm driving around this Prius.
Just
It's just like
bombing through the streets. Yeah.
so I was contributing to the loudness in that way.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. I'm here. I'm out here on the streets. Yeah, it was funny. I think in a lot of ways, I I appreciate that we learned that, or you learned that, and then I learned concurrent to that. I think a cool thing we learned was how little we have to do to be enough. Now, I think for a lot of people, they were wrong about that, meaning they were like, oh, they didn't actually do enough, and it destroyed it psychologically damaged people. Um, not being around people. But especially for introverts, for whom being around people is a battery drain, as opposed to an extrovert, who I think management is probably the best. I agree with you, is like the best way to think of this whole introversion extroversion thing, of just like your battery is filled by other people. So for extroverts, it was like cataclysmic, like it was one of the more destructive. But at the same time, also for them to realize you don't have to you don't have to be doing anything. Now, the problem is we still had, I think it would have been even more healing had we not the internet. I think the internet really effed a lot of that up because then people just turned to controlled noise. And then in some ways, like for me, it was louder because I went virtual because I was like, where are the people? Because I'm definitely extroverted. So I was like, where do I get my energy from? I got to go where the people are. And then it was like the noisiest time for me in national history. It was so loud. The thing I like, though, concurrent to that, is the world is too bright, it's too much light. And
mm,
so we polluted the air a lot less. We polluted the sky a lot less. And we realized that was like doable with very minimal motivation.
yeah,
Because again, COVID, not a threat to most people. Literally, statistically, most people. But like the median IFR in 2020 was like 0.27, makes it about 2 to 3 times more deadly than like influenza. But higher R, so R not or whatever, so more transmissible. Hence the more widespread deaths. But just generally speaking, for any individual person, it's not anything to be afraid of. And yet, you participated in this event of like slowing down, chilling out, shutting stuff down, shutting stuff off. Look what happens. You're okay, like as a person. All that stimulation, all that like dopamine charge, like you can actually fast from it. So in some ways, it was a wild force fast, and I think that is. I'm glad that you noticed that.
yeah, I'm relating that. Um, I've fluctuated in my self-care and my health, and
Yeah, yeah,
the most reliable way I track that is weight. I can't remember if we've done a whole episode about that, but it's come up a number of times around like fat phobia and stuff like that. But
yeah.
it's interesting, I get why fixating, obsessing about weight is not necessarily healthy, and it tends to be a metric that aligns with a number of other health metrics for me
It
and probably
does.
other people.
Yes, yes. I think
So
it's ease of use more than anything.
it's a very easy metric to track, and it's the one I
Yeah,
track most consistently. So with all those disclaimers,
yeah.
my weight significantly dropped. Because I just so anyway, I'm relating this as the way I wrote it was in terms of apocalypse,
Mm.
I react super positively in terms of taking care of myself. I
Yeah.
mean, it was for me, it was very much like a, oh, you know, this is
Yeah.
this is big, whether it's the virus or how we're reacting to it or whatever. Like I don't know, I've never been in a
Something's
lockdown
happening.
before. It's like, holy
Yeah.
crap. And I was like, I need to be as healthy as I can. I need to be in
Yeah.
this with it and able to, whatever happens, take care of my family. Like I might have
Yeah.
to, my what do they call it? Like my go plan, my what is that when you pack
Oh,
a
like
bag,
oh,
like
like
your
bug
go
out
bag?
bag or whatever.
What is it?
Like a bug out bag.
Bug out bag, whatever. Yeah, my bug
Yeah.
out plan is like I'm gonna hike to where my mom lives, like 25 miles from here, and then go from there. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like I need to be ready.
Yeah. You need to be ready to actually walk 25 miles. Which I actually have you did you already do like you've walked some pretty significant mile distances in the past 5 years as well.
Well,
Um,
that's funny you said because when I
yeah.
joined my friend Rochelle, who walked from Chicago to Montgomery, she walked 825 miles, and I walked the last 25 miles with her.
Yeah.
Uh,
That
Not
was almost like
entirely,
a
but sort of
yeah.
halfway from Selma to Montgomery.
That's a test. That's that was a good test for your thesis. Yeah, yeah. I thought that I was radically unwell at the time, just autoimmune wise. But I had the same impetus where I was like, oh, I better optimize because I'm in a higher threat category. Um, and that was good, I think, to know that like it takes a minimal amount of motivation to go ahead and do those things. I think it's helpful to know the next time you require said motivation. Speaking of lockdowns, I think what we learned, and this is the biggest, fattest for any of my friends who hate me now. Um, this is my big fat I told you so one. Number three. That's why I tried to save it for three. Almost everything public health officials told us to do was more harm than good. That was my concern pretty early on. And I didn't live in a place that like radically locked down. I know Chicago did, like very, like it sounds like they locked down about 10 times harder than Raleigh did. And people there too. There were some adamants, but lockdowns just this past week in one of these 5-year anniversary lookbacks, the Boston Globe, a left bias, esteemed institution, speaking of Spotlight, finally said which we talked about 3 years ago. And I remember when we recorded it, it was one of the first couple ones. I think your brother was listening, and he was just like, I don't know what he's talking about with this lockdown stuff. And so I've not been attendant, folks, fans to our Tumblr, but I was still using the Tumblr, and I put whatever 6, 7 different studies about this. I was like, this is just what the science is saying. But on Boston Globe headline, the lockdowns were never really effective. Quote, new research shows COVID stay-at-home orders did more harm than good. The Telegraph says vaccine mandates did more harm than good. House report claims this is the most exhaustive government report on looking back on government measures and kind of doing an efficiency evaluation. It's the closest thing we got to like a sort of public collective reckoning on it in a government sense. Vaccine mandates did more harm than good. New York Times, 2023. This is opinion section, to be fair. The mask mandates did nothing. Will any lesson be learned? School closures. The CBC left bias. Pandemic's long shadow. There they did again. It's not pandemic shadow. Parents, experts say kids still struggling with academics, attendance, social skills. The literacy rates, math rates, mental health rates, all of those deteriorated, all got like worse because of school closures, and there's no evidence that school closures was relevant to uh, transmission such that that would offset the cost. 6 feet apart. Thehill.com, centered bias. Quote, nobody knows origins of 6 foot social distancing recommendation. I just want to say that out loud for folks, because these other ones are plainly obvious from a lot of literature, but the 6 feet apart was just literally made up, pulled out of thin air, New York Times said in 2021. I went to a boba place 4 days ago. They still had the stickers on the ground. So they made those stickers to last. And I say that for that purpose, because you might even have some local eateries that still have little tags on the ground or whatever. There are abundant amounts of them around Raleigh. They made those stickers to last because that's how seriously they took something that people just made up. I want you to hear that. People just made it up. Multiple, which is crazy town. There you go. Okay, yeah, they're still out there. And they're still on the floor of my boba joint. I try to peel any mask stickers and signs. I take them down wherever I can. Same thing with 6 feet under. 6 feet under. There you go. That's a Freudian slip. So 6 feet, folks, and people did it. Let's look back to 2020. People did it, and they got pissed off at you if you got too close to them. So again, not rational. People just made that shit up. That's literally like, oh, you're not wearing garlic around your neck? Vampires are definitely going to get us. That's the level of crazy people got up to. And
Oh,
plexiglass
that's a
installs.
funny connection point. Do you know where
Yeah.
this one's from?
What?
The alley in Chicago,
The
the
alley. Oh,
famously
yeah.
like goth
Yeah.
punk,
Yeah. Yeah. Punk club, right? Yeah.
right? Well, like store, pretty touristy at this point, and they
Yeah.
moved.
Yeah.
So. But anyway,
Oh, okay.
we were taking my niece there because that's what she's into. That's what they are into. Oh,
That's what those kids these days are into.
um, and they had, I don't even know, like the entire top shelf was lined with vintage Dracula dolls for some reason, complete with
Interesting.
death certificates. So it's funny you mentioned that.
Oh, that's pretty
But
hilarious.
anyway, I think and we'll get there in a minute. And some of my
Yeah.
stuff is about the mutual aid and all that. But
Yeah.
the mutual aid. Uh, but maybe I don't know if it's full on Alanis Morissette level irony, but like the irony of a punk place doing the 6 feet apart
Yes,
thing.
yes, yes. Which, in a way, I mean, you can almost justify it because it's so irrational. It's such an irrational middle finger to do something that has no basis in anything and to scream at people. I mean, so in some ways,
It is
it's
punk.
it's punk because yeah. So it is punk, but it's punk in the like um Sid Vicious wearing like a Nazi shirt, like a shirt with like a Nazi flag on it. It's like it sucks because part of punk is sucking on purpose. Let's not front. Um, but it's fat like that's fast. It's fascinating to me who got so punk in the most like obnoxious ways possible. Oh, and the last one, because this is still at my local post office, y'all. None of this is far away. All of this is still in evidence.
The
Plexiglass.
plexiglass.
Yes,
Oh yeah.
more harm than good. Again, more harm than good. More harm than good. So that, guys, lockdowns, more harm than good. Vaccine mandates, more harm than good. This is from a pretty comprehensive set of like published peer-reviewed studies, but this is just like mainstream left and center bias. Oh, I guess one was a Telegraph's a little on the right. This is like multi-bias publication sources of even this untrustworthy news, right? Openly talking about things when I don't know if y'all remember. Hopefully you do. This is the scariest part that people don't remember 5 years ago. That horrifies me. Maybe it's a trauma response. Who traumatized them is another question. Um, but that to me is fascinating.
Oh,
That
I
just
heard about it. There's
like
a place the other day that was bringing back the 6 feet. Maybe it
yeah,
was a joke, but I heard about this. I heard
yeah.
about it. It must be
Heard
true.
about it on the
Um,
on the on the wire.
what I was like, oh, maybe because people seem to be angrier now, they actually want them out of punching distance from each other.
Yeah,
That actually might have some
yeah.
merit to it.
To start swinging on them. Yeah. Well, what's fascinating to me, maybe it's different in your neighborhood, but the same people are angry. The same people are angry who are angry in 2020, swinging on people for getting too close to them 6 feet apart. And they were wrong. I mean, this is a fascinating, another episode, I guess. But like, why in the world will we and I think people take their freak out seriously back then, they shouldn't have, and take their freak out seriously now, all the people who are angry and trying to swing, in that layer of aggression. I was like, they were wrong. How many more things can they be wrong about before you just go, can't we just say that's crazy? Like they're just crazy. 6 feet apart was straight up crazy. So, folks, but now this just
And that's
correlates.
and
So,
that's common
yeah, go,
sense
go.
out of line. I mean,
Yes.
I more than you, I bought into the idea that some of this was like, oh, yeah, at least in the beginning, maybe common like a mask seems like common sense. We've talked about that ad
Yeah, yeah,
nauseam.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
okay, you're
yeah.
putting a little barrier up, okay, maybe whatever. But the like, oh, I'm gonna breathe less of this person's air 6 feet away than 1 feet away is like, what?
Sure. Like maybe, but how respiratory particles travel is actually, especially with air conditioning, it's not like it's this wildly kindergarten level, first grade level of like intellectual reckoning, where you're just like you visualize. And listen, we do this all the time. If we don't know about something, we just simplify it and go, okay, I kind of vaguely get it. That we just are breathing direct particles that directly come out of my mouth and go directly into your face. And that's just how all particles travel in direct lines, one from
They're
another.
like light. It's like light.
Yeah, yeah, just shooting a beam. I'm shooting spit beams into your face all day long. I mean, which is happening. It's just not so direct. That's all, folks.
Well, again, the common sense is like, well, the fact that we reliably can breathe, you know, anywhere
Yeah,
must mean
yeah,
that the air kind of tends to homogenize and spread out and
yeah, yeah,
fill in all the little cracks. And
yeah. Dilute it. It's all dilution. What's fascinating to me, this relates to the number one, and actually one of my hopes for the future is uh, for whatever reason, Democrats didn't learn this lesson. They didn't learn any of the top three lessons I have. Um, they were polled. Pew Research, again, regarded by most media bias places as one of the least biased sources and actually one of the most reliable sources in terms of, especially what they're claiming. They're claiming public opinion. Um, 54% of Democrats have great deal or fair amount of trust in media. That puts them outside the national average significantly. They also, majority of Democrats think public health did a good job responding to the pandemic. I saw that in the past in these collective articles, and I'm just like, what in the like literally, what are they talking about? Like what response? Because I just listed not all the responses. There are other responses, but those are pretty big ones. School closures, lockdowns, mask mandates, vaccine mandates. More harm than good. All of those. So, in what way would that be a good job to do something that hurts more than it helps? Like, is that the new standard of what good is? Again, I'm trying everything I can to steel man that concept. But when I read that, I was like, that is horrifying. Like, that frightens me, I think, more than any statistic. That frightens me more than the million dead people. Like, that is one of the scariest things that more than half of an entire, close to half, maybe a little less than half of our country now, probably, whatever, in a very vague sense, uh, that, let's say over 100, whatever, tens of millions of people think that, like, yeah, that was doing more harm than good is doing a good job. Or
well,
they
I
just
think
don't know that happened because they only, whatever, they're in the Fox News effect or whatever, the left version of Fox News effect, where all they do is absorb proper like narrative propaganda. So then they're just like, Trump's batting 1,000. They're like the Democrats batting 1,000. They're just like,
yeah.
okay.
Oh no, and it's I think the biggest defense is typically ignorance, right? It's typically like, well, we didn't know better, and we talked about that at
Yeah,
length.
yeah,
But
yeah.
how much even you would offer a tiny amount of forgiveness, but I think you limit it to maybe 2 weeks in
Yeah,
terms of like, yeah, sure, like let's just pull the emergency brake and see what's going on here,
yeah.
and you know,
Like a little system check, a little something. I mean, it's still harmful. Like I still don't think that would have been more good than harm. But I was like, I sort of understand it as a response, a human response.
right,
Yeah. And the thing I want to forgive, and I think I mean, gosh, that's the biggest thing, is the thing we need to learn is like how forgiveness operates.
yeah.
And I hold to a biblical standard of forgiveness, which means you forgive anyone, guys, and this is rough. You forgive anyone and everyone who apologizes to you.
Mm,
Apology is central. No apology, it's not forgiveness. It's just something else. Then it's just kind of like letting go. I'm just letting go of that. Yeah, okay. You're probably sublimating it. Let's be honest. You're just going to shove it into some dark corner and you're going to have an ulcer when you're 83, but whatever. Sure, whatever. But like, but to me, I'm like a radical forgiver, but apology has to occur. And then I think if half of the whole group thinks that they did a good job, I was like, oh, no apologies are forthcoming, which means no actual forgiveness is forthcoming, which means there's a ton of people walking around with burdens huge burdens they didn't have before, they didn't need to pick up, and now they're stuck with them. And sadly, everyone's stuck with it. Because I think maybe not most people, maybe plenty of people don't want to forgive. They're like, no, I remember when the majority of Democrats wanted to put us in camps. They wanted to put us in government camps for not getting vaccinated. So I'm not forgetting that anytime soon. I'm not forgetting that either, but I'm willing and excited to forgive because what are we supposed to do? Just hold on to that as a resentment for the rest of our lives? And every time we meet a Democrat being like, there's a 50% chance you wanted to put me in a flipping government camp. Like, what? Who wants to walk around like that? That's exhausting. And it's just not statistically accurate because you can't gauge people off of you can't gauge an individual off of statistics. But like, I don't know. That's my big fury and my big fear and my big hope all wrapped up into one. Because I like forgiveness, dude. Forgiveness is like maybe the most important thing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I wonder how this weaves in with the biblical definition. I don't know, heard this or adopted this myself, but the main purpose of forgiveness is for me, so I don't get that ulcer in 40 years,
Yeah.
and I have a most or even all agency over that. Like if I can choose to forgive, which
Yep.
would be a little different in the sense that it doesn't require an apology, because that's the part you certainly can't force it, because there's nothing worse than a forced apology. I mean, nothing worse.
Nothing. Nothing. Having your toenails ripped out. Not worse.
Um,
Yeah, forced apologies. They do suck. Let's be honest. I mean,
but
I
is
think
it I think I hear you saying it's in that definition, it's not true forgiveness
yeah,
unless like
well,
that's that.
but yeah, biblically speaking, that's just not forgive. Kind of like just like a wedding demands some sort of exchange of oath.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
let's say you didn't exchange oaths. I was like, is that a wedding? I'm not saying people even have to be there. I think witnesses should be there. I'd probably put it as a schematic. But at some point, it has to be a mutual commitment.
Yeah.
And so forgiveness to me, and forgiveness is like like socially one of the more important things human beings need to practice because we're fallible, we're imperfect creatures, and we're going to bump in and do the wrong thing to each other
Yeah.
on a
Totally.
daily basis. So I mean, obviously, most importantly, we need forgiveness from God, so we need to apologize there. But like between each other, it's even more wild because we're all imperfect. So we're going to receive things imperfectly, do things imperfectly, blah, blah, blah. We're always bumping into it. So forgiveness, like the process, the mutual aid, literally, of forgiveness is, I think, one of the great healing balms for which no pandemic or pandemic response is too large. I mean, you look at how it is jumping off at a tangent, but you look at like Rwanda. I don't know if you've watched any documentaries on what's occurred there in the past decade or so. Like there are communities where people hacked people's family members to death with machetes because there were Hutsis and Tutsis or whatever, Tutsis and Hutus, sorry. And they've like actively engaged as a society in reconciliation, like true
Yeah.
forgiveness,
I have
meaning,
seen some of that. Yeah.
yeah,
So
the
it's
people
like,
have literally said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for hacking your relatives to death with machetes. And people have enacted, I mean, to me, I'm starting to cry already. The radical forgiveness of like, I receive that and I forgive you. And the mutual, like you were talking about, the mutual unburdening. I mean, what? I mean, it's just such a magnificent, like it's magic. Like it's a magic healing thing. But again, the mutuality is really where it comes to like blue. Like that, to me, that's just where it blooms. It blooms in a way that's like, now listen, some people die and they never say sorry. And what are you going to do? Carry around resentment? My gosh, let go of resentment as soon as possible. Like go ahead and get through that process. Forgiveness can never happen, but because the person's dead and they mucked it up. But again, dispositionally, like you're talking about, it's like our jobs on the individual level is to relieve ourselves of that burden, but also just like constantly dispositionally turn to that place where you're like, it will require me the least amount of time. I can be the most efficient in forgiving you and it being real because I'm doing as much of the processing on my own as I can.
yeah.
Waiting for that moment of healing, of like healing that I think is just it could blow our minds. It could blow our minds.
All right. I got another one.
Yep.
It's related in a way. we can do a lot on Zoom in terms of human
Mm,
connection,
mm.
which, I had a whole startup, and actually we started before the lockdowns by a few months. So I,
Very crafty.
told you so. But
Yeah.
uh, and since you mentioned it, even healing, I mean, that was part of what Feel Real was about. That's part of the idea of being in circle is
Yeah.
being real. It wasn't entirely focused on forgiveness, but somebody in our network, somebody focuses on grief, somebody hosts a forgiveness circle, etc.
Yeah.
Um, but then it's really interesting, and I haven't done a ton of research recently, but at some point during the lockdowns, it was like everybody had to figure out Zoom for the most part. Zoom like won the technology war in that way, unless you were a
Yes.
corporation, you happened to be locked into something else. But uh, so I think, as a technologist and as somebody who's always believed in this, I mean, how much sci-fi was just like, oh, you just jump on your video call, So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, here we are, cool.
Here we are. Yep.
Um, and and at the same, and then what coupled with that was many, many companies saying, hey, you can work from home, and some went back immediately. Like, I don't know, my brother works for Abbott, and they're pretty old school, so they were just like,
Okay.
sooner we can get people sitting in their offices having the same Zoom calls, the better. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But then there's stuff coming out recently, with
Mm.
even major tech firms that you'd think might be different, have a different orientation, or like, yeah, like eager to get everybody back. And I don't know. I guess I'm of two minds about that, because on the one hand, one of the reasons I was so fixated on virtual gathering, online gathering, was because it was not common in 2019, and
Hmm.
I wanted to
Yeah.
sort of say, hey, we should do
Yep.
more of this, because there's accessibility advantages. You can reach across the world in an instant, and
Yeah.
if there's some nuances to how you need to facilitate, but it is really possible to get deep together and connect. And at the same time, I was never like against in-person gathering.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but if anything, I've sort of it's helped me actually learn maybe how important in-person gathering really is. And
Hmm.
and so yeah, I don't know where it stands right now. It's different for every company, but I hear a lot of people complaining about that, because let's face it, like with workplace disengagement being somewhere between, I don't even know, 50 to 80%, probably depending on who you ask.
Wow.
Like, most people aren't actually filling their time with work, with 40-hour work
Yeah.
weeks. Anyway, it's just it's an illusion. So it's like,
Yeah.
why not like trust that people we can build more sort of goal-based systems rather than time-based systems, and say, look, like, let's
Hmm.
just trust each other to manage our lives and get things done, and take care of their families, and have more time for what matters, and all of that,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. It's a radical reorganization that I think it's sort of like crested and reduced, but the water level is much higher now than it was previous. And so I think fascinatingly, it's almost like we need to start figuring out how to navigate and encourage more in person to respond to that percentage in order to balance it better, as opposed to reducing I don't know that we need to reduce the virtual percentage in terms of that world. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, oh, we need to just counteract this differently. This is maybe in some ways almost as different as like when we went from an all smoking culture to a non-smoking culture. It was like, oh, okay, we have some serious adaptations we've got to, because there used to be smoke rooms or smoke
Yeah.
break room, that were just purely for smokers. And you also had to anticipate like scheduling and getting things done around how many smoke breaks people were allowed and blah, blah. You know what I mean? And it was part of socialization. Like it's just a huge part of work, like drinking and smoking or whatever. And so like we do have to figure out, get close to each other. Because I think really the cool thing was, yeah, I feel like we realized some maximal potentials and therefore maximal meaning limits. Okay, here are the limits on it of what we can do, let's say via Zoom. And I'm way newer to Zoom than you are. Like you are, I don't even know, like
Oh,
nine, you're
I
90,
was in the Matrix,
yeah,
especially during the lockdowns. I mean, it
yeah.
was like,
You're 95, you're probably 95 out of 100 Zoom calls I've ever been on. So I'm
uh,
I'm an accidental Luddite in this world. Oh, okay. My last one of lessons we learned. Science wins mostly. This is number five. Science wins, parentheses, mostly. The science, TM, loses. Again, folks, I've said this before. Anytime a news article says experts are blank, 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 oh my gosh, go ahead and reduce your faith in that article to one third. Just keep it at one third. Um, that's just literally someone's like opinion, man. And at some point, the science TM, capital T, capital S, with a little TM next to it, became the sort of two online parlance of what was referred to as these sort of collections of experts or even organizing bodies of experts who then decreed kind of what the conclusions of science were. But as I've quoted on this show before, it's one of my favorites, as Richard Feynman, dorm room wall scientist, top 10 figure, said science is the belief in the ignorance of experts. Uh, Science is very delightfully, experts think something, cool, prove it. I love it. Like I love, and I think science, again, speaking of all those things that were more harm than good, the reason we know that is science. We had at some point one of the more largest scientific figures in the country saying, when people question me, they're really questioning the science. And I think that's really when the online thing of like, okay, let's take that as a trademark, the science. So what you say is the science is the science. I don't think everyone's learned that lesson. I think there's a lot of people who still look at expert consensus as the most relevant scientific information. That's not how scientific hierarchies really work. That's not really how science would function. I still think science is awesome, and I think science really has, for all its terrible foibles. Listen, our scientific community is a flipping mess. The publication world is a flipping mess. I can't remember the percentage, but it's astronomically high of how many studies are like non-reproducible in terms of things that are published and even peer reviewed. So we've got serious problems in that arena. However, again, I'm a classic liberal, man. I really believe in the that science won because it showed out it's the only reason that I, as an unemployed actor, was right about a whole bunch of crap that public health officials were saying the opposite of. And so I was just like, well, what does science say to do? It says to look at, systematic surveys of RCTs as the best available evidence. Let me go read all those. Let me just look at it all. Let me look. Oh, here's what the evidence says. And so I was like, well, the evidence says this, though, y'all. Why is everyone running in that direction? Like, again, you're running into a room that's going to explode, but actually the manual, whatever, the Titanic manual says that you're actually to take this one ladder. We're all just supposed to go up the ladder. No, the leader says go that way. Um, so, but I think ultimately the whole reason we can actually look back and go, yes, more harm than good was because of science. So again, people have a misapprehension that some people people opposed to all these things are anti-science. It's literally the exact opposite of the truth. And I think that's actually a really good thing because I do think science, for all its partisan problems, does remain at least a potential area of like a meeting ground for all kinds of people where we can go, well, what can we test? What can we test and repeat? And what can we go, oh, okay, well, that happens really consistently. Guys, this happens really consistently. Okay, good. That helps us like pattern life together and go, oh, okay, that's a consistent pattern. Great. Because we all develop our own patterns in our own head. And who knows how many, sometimes they work for us, even if they're wrong. So I just think, I don't know. I think science really it won big after losing big. It lost the battle of the pandemic response, but it's winning the war.
Yeah, I mean that's beautifully said. I don't have a whole lot to offer there other than also being a fan of science. We talked
Yeah.
about my dad earlier. He was also a scientist and an astronomer, and so I grew up believing in science and the scientific method. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I greatly appreciate about our dialogues over the years because you've brought me so much deeper into that science and some of the actual studies, getting way, way deeper than the headlines, which are often quite misleading. So,
They can really be, yeah, really confusing. I still don't 100% know why that is. But I don't like it, Grumpy Man says. What's your I think we're on your last of the five.
yes, what we learned, people are people,
Mm-hmm.
as Dave Gahan so famously said. So I know we've spoken about this. It's also in some length. but I would say I lost my naivete about finding the perfect revolution. This happened
Yeah,
in
yeah.
mutual aid groups. This happened in my white male affinity group. Um, I'm often considering myself post woke at this point because of this phenomenon. Um, there were beautiful aspects of that, and
Yeah.
some, in fact, I've seen recently people maybe, I don't know if this is statistically true, but maybe there's sort of a surge in like mutual aid since Trump was elected, because it's kind of attached to that, fighting back spirit of like, oh geez,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, we actually need to help each other again. Um,
Yeah.
but that's also kind of a disappointing aspect of it, is like, okay, well, why do we need something extreme, or just even the illusion of
Y-
something extreme happening,
Yeah, yeah.
in order to just be good neighbors and take care of each other? And
Yeah.
so yeah, and then within that system, I just realized, yeah, I've done a lot of healing, and it's at least like scar tissue. Maybe it's like a little bit. It's not fully healed, but it's like I need one of those. I'm not even
Oh yeah.
one of those
Oh yeah.
brushes. Anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
A debridement to rip out the necrotic tissue from your wound.
oh God. Maybe.
Sure. Maybe.
What's
Maybe.
the emotional version of that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, just encountering hypocrisy, at least, if not violence enacted against me in some circumstances, and as disappointing and hurtful as that was, it was also like this incredible awakening, and just realizing, oh my God, like I've been so naive. Like, why did I expect? Why do I put like revolutionaries on a pedestal of,
Yeah.
yeah, they
Yeah.
must have the
Yeah.
right answers? That's just a very immature attitude to think anybody has all the right answers, because that's just,
Yeah.
it's anti-communal, it's anti-truth seeking, really, because truth comes from. I hope we could agree on that. I know we have some slight differences about
Mm.
truth, but in the sense that it is the scientific inquiry, right? Is to
Yeah.
seek, always be seeking, always be putting on new lenses and questions and perspectives. And
Yeah, keep asking, keep looking, keep seeking. Yeah, well, I think that's a classic disillusionment of any entry into any religion, of which woke is. And so and this burns people I can speak it from a Christian perspective. This burns a lot of people in the church too, where they're like, church is just filled with hypocrites. And you're like, well, yeah. I mean, that's why the hospital's full of sick people. Yeah. Yeah, that's really no surprise. And so so the funny thing is almost like, yeah, that's that weird expectation of, yeah, like and that can happen in churches with like venerating the pastor or something, or like the people who seem most religious. Um, but I just think that like having that format of like essentially we're all sinners, so we're all imperfect is just like it allows those crashes to slow over time. But it's hard not to when you get excited about something new. You're like, I feel like that way about social media or whatever, that I was like, when social media came around and started really getting big, I was like, this big hope. And it was just like, it was crushing disappointment to realize like it wasn't going to be used to really kind of like truly change the world for the better because it was filled with too many bitter and angry and wrong people or whatever. Um,
right, it's like, well, where
yeah,
did your expectations come from? That's the
yeah, exactly. Like all of a sudden this was going to just perfect people
yeah.
progressively, maybe progressive. We can get better. We can get better at it.
So a couple of
Like,
adjacencies
yeah.
are, neighbors getting to know each other. I've
Oh,
heard a
nice.
number of stories. I was just talking to a friend the other day. I hadn't caught up. It's funny. I'm having a number of conversations where I haven't really talked to somebody since maybe 2020 or even earlier, and it's kind of like,
Oh,
it's just
wow. Yeah,
fascinating,
yeah.
right? Like, kind of just catching up, and like maybe to some degree having a reckoning. And some folks
Yep.
relocated, like during that lockdown, and if they were lucky, they really got to know their neighbors, because you felt like you were like in this little pod.
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful, and doesn't, I don't know, often, but doesn't always happen um, especially in like
Yeah.
large metro areas. Uh,
Yes.
and then the last thing for me is that people protest way more when they are cooped up in their houses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. People were ready, dude. That was
I
a,
think I lost count. I mean, I might have gone to 25 or 30 protests after George Floyd.
yeah. Yeah. People were ready, man. Well, it just lets you know like that energy of got to be around people and something's wrong that we need to change. I mean, that is the, I mean, is there a better, what's the word? A substrate. Is there a better substrate for growing the fungus of strident activism? So in some ways, what a great thing, what a great setup. Chaos, the sort of chaos capitalism works to grow billionaires, but it also grows revolutionaries, or even revolutionary thinkers. Heck yeah, man. Well, this relates to, I think I've sort of interwoven some of my like what we still need to learn. Uh, the majority of Democrats didn't learn the top three lessons, and I don't understand why that happened, and I'd love to, which is why I try to continually talk to as many people on the left as I can, mostly virtually. Common ground, not division, is the way forward. We've sort of addressed that a little bit. The science TM is not science. I already sort of addressed that. And then I have a TBD in front of my fist, so I'm just going to say my last one. Um, the lesson we haven't learned, which relates to a bunch of things we've already talked about, is exhibited in these two quotes. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The unexamined life is not worth living. And to sort of summarize those with my own quote, we live in a therapy obsessed culture that all of a sudden didn't seem to want to do anything but blame others as like a synergy of those two things. I was
Mm.
like, I don't think we learned that lesson. And I feel like the response and the inappropriate response and the destructive, even all harmful, even all the way up to evil response, which we see evidence of, not just assumption, but evidence of, suggests to me that like these quotes, which have been part of my life, and listen, I'm not a person who carries around a ton of quotes. But these are quotes that have been in those who cannot remember the past or condemned to repeat it has been in my psyche probably since I was about 6 or 7 years old. It's never left my head. And the unexamined life is not worth living, probably in my teens. So that's been in my head for 30 years. And I was just like, I I grabbed them because I kept hearing them often enough from other people in the culture. So I was like, oh, these are things we culturally believe. That's why people regurgitate them so much. These are like we are known by the quotes we remember and the stories we tell as a
Oh, the
culture.
older I get, I realize why cliches are cliches.
Yeah, you're like, oh, dang, these are helpful tools.
Like they were right. Damn it.
Yeah, yeah, this is like, and again, as long as you don't look at it as like a perfect thing, an absolutist thing, like, oh, this is never
Wait, what? How do
going
you do
to,
that?
oh, I know, right? You just practice, man. And then the therapy, like the fact that we are the most, but again, I lived in LA for 20 years, so I know I have a bias there of like how therapy obsessed our culture is, generally speaking. But what I noticed was in that therapy obsessed culture, blaming others was and remains so popular as a response to traumatic events. So in some ways, I was like, I don't want to throw the whole baby out of the bathwater, but I was like, ooh, maybe therapy's like been one of the worst things possible for society. Meaning, if you have enough trash therapists who pretty much tell you, and I have friends who are steeped in therapy so much that it's like almost a religion, meaning that like if they go on a date and they find out the guy's never been in therapy, they're like, no. It's like finding out he's not Jewish. Um, So it's that level of like religious importance. And I have heard enough anecdotally because they can share their therapy sessions. Their therapist can't, but they can. And about like the revelations that they tell people about are when the therapist kind of like really unravels how all of this trauma is their parents' fault.
Great.
Or all these things are somebody else's fault. In which case I was like, oh. So for years I thought it was kind of helping you live the examined life that is truly worth living. That I was like, oh, if it's just actually figuring out who to blame for the cycles of generational trauma, in which case maybe it succeeded in its goal, which was everything is somebody else's fault.
Mm. Well, in that way, I'm pretty skeptical, even while I'm building an adjacent AI tool. I'm actually quite skeptical about full-on AI therapists, although replacing what you
Yeah.
just described is very easy for an AI because they're just designed to be people pleasers. And, it'd be trivial for the average AI to just help you figure out how you're right and blame somebody else.
Yes, that'd be a great thing to ask AI. Here's all my friends' text messages to me from the last. Please give me a 7 point analysis, acting as my therapist, on how they are a bitch and I am right.
Yeah. No, I'm actually helping some friends through something and was sort of playing friend slash mediator, and it's all falling apart. And
Oh
one thing I'm
man.
noticing from that is one party, as they're describing kind of working through this, I think deep down there's a ton of hurt. And I think
Sure.
a lot of this is like, how do we want to escape hurt? And that's
Mm,
understandable. I've certainly spent a lot of time escaping hurt and
yeah.
piling things on top of it. But one of the things I'm noticing is how it can also come out as what sometimes we call spiritual ego or spiritual bypass, where it's not such a veiled way of saying like, well, I'm proud of myself because I always showed up with love and integrity,
Yeah.
you know, and then rattling off all these judgments, and it's like, well, I'm not entirely hearing that right now, but
Yeah. Yeah. Did you? But did you? You did use the word always. So, I mean, I'm a semantic person. I'm always like, that suggests at some point there's a smudge. To me, it's just like yeah, it's emotional smudging. Is what I was thinking, like smudging the edges of something. And you're like, oh,
mm,
I don't really see. You've deliberately put your thumb on it and rubbed the ink out, so you can't really tell where the edges are. So, to you,
like
it
in
could just
Fargo
be
when he
always.
keeps trying to send the VIN numbers, and he's just like,
Yes, I
it's
can't.
the fax
I
machine.
I can't. I can't see these. Oh gosh. Oh gosh.
Oh, Fargo reference. Wow.
Oh,
Uh,
Fargo, nice. And a Dave Gagan quote already.
all right.
Um,
Was that all we need to learn? You got three?
I mean those are I think the
I
four
mean, not all,
strong.
but like the
Yeah,
top.
yeah. Those are the four that I had, and I thought maybe throughout the course of this I'd have another one. But yeah. I mean the Democrat, and I know a lot of times, and I'm going to apologize on air or whatever this is, alive, that like I probably have made you stand in too often for a quote unquote generic leftist or non-generic leftist, being that like I get so confused. And I have other people who are like very much on the left who I talk to on a regular basis virtually, um, to try to reckon these things out. But I think that's the like obviously it's part of my disillusionment. But like this whole thing of again, the second scariest thing, the first scariest thing is like no apologies and no forgiveness is that's like socially, I think that's going to have more devastating results than even the lockdowns. Like that's probably going to be the poison that kills us as a people, as a culture, probably more than anything else, because it's such a broad scale thing. Um, but then the other one is just like, well, who are these majority of an entire cohort who thinks things that we pretty demonstrably know uncontroversially at this point. Now it was controversial previously for whatever that's a whole other thing. And so like are all these things that were more harm than good, then why or what like what are people talking about and who are these people? Like how did that happen? Like how because just being like I'm gonna say that like literally the majority of people are wrong. Like in terms of like if we're gonna use the scientific enterprise to find out like what actually happens. Like that's like flat earth level like this is how it is. And again, I could be wrong about flat Earth. Someday I may admit it because I'm like, oh my gosh, I finally saw the proof or whatever. Because I use that as an example quite a lot. And I know the flat earthers out there are like, you stop it. Stop using us as the standard of silliness. Um, but
Oh, it's
yeah,
helped me.
so I want to apologize that I think I put you in the position. uh, I don't even know. Let's say 17 times too often, maybe 47.
That's
Just like
precise.
yeah.
Okay, well, let me practice. I forgive you
Thank you.
from the bottom of my heart and the top of my
Thank you.
heart and the sides of my
Thank
heart and the inside of
you.
my heart.
That's nice.
Um,
Thank you.
and I appreciate it. I mean, it's helped me be introspective. I guess I always tend to ask the question like, oh, am I that? Am I not that? And I have a lot of that programming, both from upbringing and
Sure.
the
Yeah, yeah,
movements
yeah.
I've attached to. And so it's helped me like dissect that and turn it inside out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I
awesome.
don't, and you're elusive. I mean, I think one of our friends was like, what, Brendan, like what box would we put him in? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, like classic liberal, maybe libertarian. If you had to pick a box,
Maybe,
not
yeah.
really. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Liberal. I mean, I think liberal really works for me in terms of like my political philosophy, which is why, again, for most of my life, I was like generally drawn to the Democrats. And then I just had disputes with some of their things that I felt like were anti-liberal. But yeah, just like if you look up a liberal dictionary, I'm like, yeah, that sounds, again, I'm not an absolute, like, I'm not like, oh, that's perfect. It's not perfect. paradigm. But to me, I'm like, yeah, that seems like the best way in terms of governance,
Yeah.
outside of like I suppose in a theocrat, I might be a theocrat in the purest sense, but I don't believe the circumstances exist wherein being a theocrat would be appropriate
Mm.
as far as I can tell. So for me, that's more of like a like believing that a benevolent despot is the best form of ruler, which I do, but it's like kind of in the realm of pure theory.
All right. Got it.
That's my
All right.
box.
Here are my what we need to
Yes,
learn,
yes,
which yeah, some of these are more or less covered. The power of pausing and the need for
mm,
healing. We've talked about that
yeah,
a fair
beautiful.
amount. We seemed all too eager to escape the forced pause. I mean, that was my sense.
Yeah. Oh
Or at
yeah,
least I
yeah.
think one of the motivations for getting out and protesting, not that it was entirely motivated by that. I think there were other, concerns happening, but
Actual things happening. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think why. I mean, why hasn't why doesn't that happen right now? It's not like the world has fewer, atrocities, happening at large.
Gosh, no.
Um, so uh, yeah, and I remember saying that at that time and saying,
Yeah,
"Gosh, I really hope we learn these lessons." I think I said those words out loud quite a few times,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
in I'm in that we too. Like, gosh, this is and there were definitely people sort of in my industry, so to speak, that were like, "Yeah, like this is an amazing opportunity. It's like everybody gets a retreat if like
Yeah,
just meditate more or like find your healing path or whatever." Um,
yeah.
uh,
I think it was really hard. This is what's interesting to speak of that too, in terms of your cohort. This is one of the sad things that came out of it is like this, I think it's a good phrase, but it's a little diminutive, so I'm going to use it with caution. That's my parenthetical. The laptop class,
hmm,
like like that people had that response to a lockdown that they're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so nice. Whereas
right.
I would assume probably the majority of people in the country are like, what? How am I going to pay rent?
Oh yeah.
Like, if
Yeah.
I can't work, I'm F, dude. And listen, even if we had lived in LA, we would have been bankrupt and probably I would have had to move in with a parent. Like, we didn't live multi checks ahead. We didn't have the kind of income that had gave us like months of rent. I know whatever we're making more money now, so like we're trying to figure out like how to put it away to have some sort of like multi-month like emergency fund in our
Oh
savings
my
or
God.
whatever. I'm
That's unheard of.
46 years old. I've never had that. It's
Right.
like we don't have padding. We have padding for like 2 or 3 months now, maybe, but like cool. And we could like sell the house that we were able to get by by moving to North Carolina. But I mean, I think that's a wild thing. Like, I think that's just like it's a revelation of dare. I hate using it, but let's just use it here, even though it sounds like a naughty word when I say it. But like it was a fun marker of privilege to be like, God, I'm in a good spot here. Like, this would be nice to just like take a month. And I don't say that it's just like your friends suck. A lot of my friends say the exact same thing. They're like, oh, this is actually kind of a relief. Like, just
Oh, for
I
sure.
can just chill. I can just chill. And I was like, I don't know. The Uber Eats drivers aren't chilling. The grocery store workers aren't chilling. The post office workers aren't chilling.
Yeah. Oh,
Nobody.
extraordinarily
Yeah,
privileged. I mean, I not only
yeah,
I had to change almost nothing. I mean, because I also had
yeah.
worked from home most of my career,
Oh, that's
totally
right. Yeah,
set
yeah,
up
yeah.
for it. I actually lived alone, so I didn't even have the complications of kids, or
Yeah,
anything. Now,
yeah, yeah.
I was also at a startup, so I was flat broke for most of it, leave on every single pandemic assistance program there was,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
with quite a bit of success, which you could say is also a privilege, just knowing how to navigate that, having the time to sit around and fill out forms. I mean, all that shit. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't I don't know. It's so funny. We talked about it for like days about whether we should file for anything. Um, I think I was probably, I don't know if this is an interesting thing to reflect on. I am previously disenchanted with government the same way I am now about news media. I basically look at media as about as reliable as a politician. And I was like, oh, there's no way we'll get anything. Like, there's no way it'll get to us. But I had friends who like literally like started multiple businesses off of the money that they filed for. And we're an independent. I was like, I didn't know if we could file for anything because we're like an S corp of two people. So I was like, well, and then I was like, well, and what does that take? Like if I take and we don't need it because we're staying at the time we had moved and we knew we were going to be at my parents' house for like a couple months looking for a house. Um, and so I was like, well, we don't need it technically. Like we have enough money. We could not, we could just not buy a house. And then even though that's like what we've been trying, one of the reasons we moved, we could just not buy a house and we can have groceries. Like we can, and we're staying at someone's house. So like we don't have rent. We're in a great position of privilege in that way. But that was fast. That was a fascinating thing. That's a whole nother thing of like, but I think again, this speaks to that. Maybe it is that like left, right. Maybe I have more of a right idea there where I'm like, I don't want the government to tell me what to do, and I don't necessarily want them to give me anything either. Like, don't
Mm.
give me anything, don't take anything from me. Just keep the libraries open, the roads paved, stoplights functioning, and then keep the justice. Can you make the justice system more just, please?
Oh, it was a huge growth for me, and it happened to mutual aid as well. I mean, being raised as a whatever run-of-the-mill like American middle class, lightly melanated dude, you like the
Yeah,
idea. My parents were teachers. We didn't have a lot of money, but we were never poor. And it
yeah,
was. I'd like to think there wasn't a lot of judgment about that, but it was certainly like, oh, we're not that. So born
yes,
into
yeah,
that classism is probably some degree of judgment, or just like, oh gosh, I don't
sure.
want to be that. And then I
Yeah,
realized,
yeah, yeah.
well, I am this. In fact, I have a lot of debt. I'm like, I have less
Yeah,
money than the panhandler on the street.
yeah, I'm a
Like,
negative. My net worth
right.
is negative number. Yeah.
I'm just still plugged into the matrix.
Yeah.
So um, so I'll just add that to the what I learned list was asking for help,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is not part of that training necessarily, because
Yeah,
there's some sense of just like maybe entitlement, certainly expectation, just like, well, I don't know, whatever.
sure.
I went to college, I did the things, I'm supposed to just have a paycheck, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I checked the boxes. Come on.
Uh, and then in mutual aid that showed up, right? Actually,
Mm.
the mutuality of it, right, which is incredibly important,
Yep.
if not literally the most important part, because it can't just
Yes.
be like privileged people showing up to make themselves feel better. That's like every other charity. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
well, I'm going to blast through these for the sake of time, because I know our last episode was maybe our shortest ever, and maybe we're
Yeah.
making up for here. But um,
Yeah.
because there's three that I think we've kind of covered, and then I want to land on one that I don't know that we have. So uh, here's one. We need to stay in what I'm calling deep company together. I know that
Mm,
phrase just came to me today.
mm.
Um, and Feel Real, my startup was very successful in getting people into deep dialogue circles when people had nothing better to do.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and now it's even more challenging. Um, and again, those people, like we you just helped illustrate like which people had nothing better to do. Okay, another one. The More or less covered this in other ways, but the individual reduction of fear,
Mm.
using tools such as mindfulness, doesn't
Yeah.
solve everything, but just the idea of settling in, knowing ourselves, understanding our emotions, whatever you want to call that,
Yeah.
so that at mass we can make better decisions and moves together. Like that's
Hmm.
my basic philosophy is like, well, we each have a responsibility to sort of manage how we react to things and respond,
Yeah, yeah.
and then
Identify and use tools. Yeah, that's smart.
should scale up, to be,
Yep.
as we talked about quite a bit. And then another one, we talked about our tendency to judge and be better than each other can take all forms. I think just
Hmm.
first of all, just noticing that and then finding ways to work on that. So in the case of the lockdown, that might be the masks, social media headlines, spiritual ego masquerading as healing, etc. Um, and so I think the lesson there at least is just trying to build awareness when that's happening.
Hmm.
If not the next step, which is how can we actually reduce
Yeah.
judgment, like name judgment when it's actually happening, and then reduce it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a big one. I think of course I struggle with that myself too. So like, I feel like there is a thin line, and it's not always easy to assign like the best label on it, or to put it in the best category of calling out things that are false, which is hugely helpful. Like it's the difference between executing judgment for justice, right? I mean, judgment's like the most important thing, and right judgment is like the most important thing, and then not judgment in terms of like spurious condemnation. Like just
Yeah.
almost like to me, that was the big thing. I was like, well, let's get our facts straight. Let's really let's be rigorous before we go, hold on a second, right? Like I didn't really start talking too much smack about the Democrats for about a year and a half of like, hold on a second. And I mean, I put in
I
my
remember
10,000.
you were waiting for
Yeah.
that recconing. You were like, well,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
still a chance.
Yeah, let's see. And then I was like, oh no, people just don't care. So, but like, yeah, but I was like putting in the work to make sure your judgments are sound before you pronounce judgment, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the beauty, it's what we long for in a justice system. Well, they really listen to everything, they really weighed all the evidence, and then they just did their best job from there, as opposed to like what we function in, especially in a social media, like internet-driven world, is the equivalent of the defendant walking into the courtroom, the jurors start whispering amongst each other. And then they're like, within 20 minutes, they're like, we have a verdict, Your Honor. They're just going to interrupt the proceedings. We got it. We, like, we think we get the sense. We get, I was like, I don't think this
We
guy's
even
not.
ran it by the AI. We're good.
Yeah, exactly. Guilty, not guilty. This guy's face. I mean, come on. Look at his face.
It's like my
Guilty.
niece is super into Transformers, and I was just remembering the first movie, like the original movie,
Yeah.
and there's that. Yeah, I don't know, they end up on some planet with the Judgment, and it's just like
Yes.
the multiple faces, but
The
it's all
swiveling heads.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just like guilty, guilty.
Guilty, guilty, guilty. Oh, what just happened? Yeah, it is. I mean, it's nightmarish, right? These are like, this is why we've gone to Orwellian and Kafkaesque. I mean, it literally is. It's like, what is the trial, right? Kafka's The Trial. We're just like, wait, what is happening? What am I on trial for? What is this? How are they? What is happening?
I
It
get my
really,
Kafka through the Transformers, but anyway, that's
yes, exactly. I mean, it was intentionally a reference. It's a very deep film.
last one for me, and
Yeah.
this will be a very quick hit. We have become lazy about education, which I guess
Mm,
actually you literally just sent something today about a study that we were getting dumber.
yeah.
But specifically, like the lockdown, like we're very sensitive to this in our household. The lockdowns gave, now I'm being careful here with privilege, every kid here an iPad. I don't know how prevalent that is. I'm sure that's not everywhere.
Oh, interesting.
Now
No, no.
they overuse them. Now it's just
Yeah.
like it just became part of the system. And
Yeah.
I mean, some of these like homework programs are like video games, they're just like swiping
Mm.
for dopamine, and it's like
Yeah, that's freaking a lot. I know a lot of parents that are very freaked out about that phenomenon, especially in the public school system. Yeah, our kids were in the public school system here in Wake County, North Carolina, and they all got Chromebooks, which I got to tell you, not an iPad. iPad sounds cool. Chromebooks are not great, y'all. But every single public school kid had access to them in order to virtual education.
but Google, we still are open to your sponsorship. I mean,
Yeah, hey, if you want to come at it, we just, as long as we can keep talking smack, we're fully down. I want to address just to bring this to a close because this brings us back to us and even what started this adventure 3 years ago. Asking for help is something is like a lesson I learned at Burning Man like multiple years in a row. It was like a primary psychedelic teaching. It is something God has been working on because I've always been down to ask him for help. Asking people was not really part of the paradigm. And especially leading a camp at Burning Man was like, oh my gosh, I'm past my capacity. So learn that lesson over and over again. So in some ways, I was prepared in this uh, to respond to a pandemic or to then respond to a pandemic response by asking for help. And for me, it failed spectacularly.
mm,
I feel like at this point, I think I count, this might be a rough count, but I have had, I'd say about 17 to 19 friends of various degrees of closeness. Literally just this week, someone I have known since 2008 in affection and have done things with and spoken to and even had like debates or ideological arguments with and continued in friendship with, uh, uh, just like blocked and deleted me for, again, not even saying controversial, didn't say a controversial thing, just said a thing of like, they expressed a concern. I expressed a similar concern just in a different area. And they were like, I'm glad I can erase your toxic energy from my life and that sort of thing. Um, I have sought to try to understand what the hell was going on because nothing really made any sense. And now we can see, oh, because a lot of it didn't make sense. It was based on nothing. So I sought help aggressively. And most people said, You're gross. Get away. You're dangerous. Don't ask questions. Don't don't try to figure this out. Just do what everyone says. Essentially. Now I'm summarizing and being a little bitter about that. A rare individual, I'd say there's about a handful, maybe four people, and 20 people. Like literally, I've lost some of the closest friends in the world over asking for help, and literally like just being like, here's everything I understand. What are you guys getting? Like, what's going on? Like, do you understand where I'm coming from? So that we don't feel divided. We're trying to, and I just drove people away in droves asking for help with my desperate need and my gross need. You are one of those like 4 to 5 people who were like, oh yeah, we can try to figure this out. So thank you for responding to my plea, my call for help, of which this continues to be. Again, every time I put my voice out, and anything I say here is a call for help for people to go right on, or nope, got to adjust your course, change course, young man, old man, whatever.
Well,
So thank you.
I'm saddened by that, and you're welcome, and thank you, because I guess that's what led to this pretty extraordinary exploration. Um, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, and we do generally that is unique, and it's rooted in love. And I love you.
I
I
love
love,
you.
I love the tenacity we have not to settle for simple answers, and really, I think a courageous willingness to go basically anywhere.
Let's try it all out, man.
You
This
know,
is what a fun adventure of life this is.
almost as broad as a purview as South Park, as we were discussing the other day.
Yes. Anything's up for mockery and or examination. Let's keep curious and ridiculous as long as we possibly can.
So to re-answer the question, yes,
Yeah,
unmistakably, undeniably, we learned
yes.
something.
Yes. Did we learn anything? Yes. Did everyone learn something? No.
Well, thank you for being on this learning journey with me.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me learn and understand the world better on a daily basis.
See you soon.
See you, buddy. Love you.
Love you.